Alicia here from Sew with Alicia, and I am back for our second round of conversations with my creative friends. And Cassandra here is an amazing paper piecing quilter designer, all queen of all things quilty. So I'm pretty excited that you agreed to chat with me, and I can't wait to hear everything you have to say. So we would love to just hear from you and hear about you and all the things.
Hi, I'm so glad I can be here. It's fun. Foundation paper piecing is probably one of my very favorite techniques, so I'm excited to get to talk to you about that today. I guess I'll start at the beginning. My mom taught me to sew.
Oh, nice.
When I was pretty little, she was always a quilter, and she sewed my clothes and things. So I was really excited when I was finally allowed to start using the sewing machine. And so I made my first finished doll quilt, I guess, doll quilt or wall hanging, when I was about 8. And I have quilted and sewn ever since then. I did 10 years of sewing projects in 4-H, and then when I went off to college, they assigned me to work study in the costume shop. So
cool.
I ended up majoring in theater, and so I have a bachelor's degree in fine art painting and theater. Wow. And my master's degree is in scenic design. So I've always been sewing, whether it's clothing for myself or costumes. And I learned a lot in how scenic design applies to the design process of quilts. And I use a lot of those tools when I create my quilts now.
That's awesome. Like you have such a depth of places to draw from for your design. I taught myself to quilt like when I was, in my 20s. So I don't have like this huge background. So it's amazing to hear that you were exposed to it so young and it has just stuck with you. That's really cool. So how many quilts do you think you've made?
I have absolutely no idea. I have never really kept count. I just keep making them, and I have quite a few works in progress that are stacked up, some of which I will probably get back to, and others I may or may not.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of a common issue with a lot of us.
I think we all do that. It's the shiny objects pull us away, and it's just too much fun to start new projects.
Because I feel that need to strike while the inspiration is right there in front of me. So sometimes if I don't just plow through a project, it does get put to the side.
That's so true. So the quilt behind you is I'm going to get the name wrong because I always say it differently. The Zoo Animal Portrait quilt.
It's a Zoo Family Portrait, but yeah, you're right there.
I knew I was going to get it wrong. I call it something different every time, but that one is one that I'm working on, and it keeps getting like pushed, but I'm like, I really want to do it. So I have to pull it back and then push it away. It's so fun, but it is massive, which is amazing. Like I can't even imagine like how long did it take for you to design?
Well, it took probably about 6 weeks to design it. The one behind me, I'm making it for a second time. And
okay.
For me, the second time, I only have done this a couple of times for the second time when I make one quilt multiple times, because this slows way down. The first time I went through the design process and I was testing my templates and making the initial quilt, and that probably ended up taking 6 or 7 weeks from start to finish. Now this one I've worked on for months because I've already made it, and so the initial novelty is worn off, so I have to keep plugging away at it.
That I can relate to you on that. I am not like a repeat person. Like I don't want to make the same thing ever again. Like I'm like, I did that and I'm done with it, and I'm ready to move on. Like I like new things. But the Zoo Family Portrait it's a really special quilt. I saw it and I was like, I have to make that. So and I think I'm like halfway done, something like that.
Uh, what I have behind me is 5/12 of the way, because we did
Okay.
12 blocks so that it could be a block of the month,
Yep.
which is more of a polygon of the month. They are not block shaped.
Yeah, they're not squares, but that's fine. It doesn't really bother me. It's super fun. And I'll take it out and show my kids like, look at this month. And they're like, oh, that's so cool. So it brings them in, because I have two little boys, so they don't particularly care about my quilting so much. But this one they're definitely okay with, and they like seeing it. So, and it'll be fun when it's finished and I can like throw it on the couch, for them to use. But so I know I've read a little bit because I'm following with the zoo family, and I know for this quilt in particular, it was photos that you had taken, and when you were at the zoo, what other ways, like, where do you find inspiration for your quilts?
Most of my inspiration comes directly from a source. So I try my best to do things that I have personally observed. Every great once in a while, I'll have a project where I need to look to other sources of inspiration, but I think I get more personality out of things. So each of the animals in this quilt are from the photos I've taken over the course of about 4 years at the zoo.
Okay.
And so, when I look at the koala, he's reaching forward to grab some eucalyptus. And, I remember that day I happened to be at the zoo with my brother, and the koala was awake, which is very unusual, and moving, which is even more unusual.
Yeah.
And so each animal, I can pinpoint what day I was there, and even though it was over the course of a long period of time, and so I get that personal connection with my experience, and I think it comes through in the overall design.
Yeah, that's awesome. It can excuse me, it can tend, like, sometimes you can have an image in your quilt that feels a little bit flat, but these definitely feel like they're more woven together and moving and kind of part of a bigger picture. So that comes through for sure. So what was I gonna I'm trying to remember. I had a question then, and it kind of flowed away. So can you tell me a little bit about, I'm curious how you go about designing a pattern? Like what does that entail? And how did you get started, like, designing like huge, massive paper piecing patterns, foundational paper piecing patterns like this?
Well, it started with some smaller ones. And I think that, like a lot of people, your first foundation paper piece patterns are probably sort of a star design. That seems to be a very common early design. And so I have a few of those. And then I started experimenting with more representational things. And I live near Columbus, Ohio, and that's where the shop I work with is based. So last year I did a quilt of famous architectural features of the city. So I had depicted the art museum and the history center and our science center, as well as a lot of other, the main library, that sort of thing. So I had done more architectural things, which those are lots of straight lines for the most part, some small pieces, but not a huge number. And then for the next year, I thought, well, let's up this just a little bit. And I had finally felt like I'd gathered enough photos from the zoo, and I put the photos that I put them into Photoshop and collaged them together into a format that looked like the animals were interacting with one another, and had a nice composition. Once I have the composition, then I go into AutoCAD, which is where I do my actual design of where all the pieces are going to lay. So I put the photograph in, and I start drawing lines over all of the different sections until I have created the templates that will ultimately be used.
Yeah, that's really neat. Is AutoCAD something you learned how to use in college in your, like, design
as a scenic designer, I used AutoCAD a lot. And so it's, for me, the most efficient vector program to create this kind of a design.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I think that's awesome. I've said that word a lot of times, but you know. Well, do you have any tips? The people who are on my page, the skill levels are all over the place. So we have some beginners and we have some more advanced quilters. What are your like top 5 tips for quilters or paper piecers or whatever? What do you think?
Well, the most important thing to remember before you even start foundation paper piecing is that it's a basic technique. And so once you've learned how to do the foundation paper piecing and how to attach the segments together, because it is a little bit different than traditional piecing to get your lines to match up because you're sewing through paper as well as fabric. Yeah. Once you've learned those 2 basic things, all your world is completely open. You can do any foundation paper pieced pattern, because it's, even if it is really complex like this, it's still the same basic skills. It just has more pieces. Right. So it's not as scary as it sounds. You only have to learn a couple of things. But my 5 tips would be, number 1, start with solids or batiks because they look the same on both sides. And when you're first learning a new technique, it's kind of nice to have the leeway of not worrying about the right sides together, especially with foundation paper piecing, because it is a little taxing on your brain when you're first starting. So that just takes one element out that you don't have to worry about.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good tip.
And always cut your pieces larger than what you think you need. And so for when I calculate yardages, I take every piece and I draw a box around it, and then I add a 1/2 inch seam allowance around that whole box. So even a tiny piece is going to have at least 2 inches worth of fabric accounted for. So I try to make sure that we all have a little give there with our fabrics.
Yeah.
My 3rd is have a good source of light, because you're going to spend a lot of time holding your paper up to your light source to make sure that you're going to cover it. And I did a YouTube video about how to foundation paper piece that went with this pattern. And I explained how I do the positioning. But either a light box is fabulous, but not everyone has that. So just a good light will make a big difference.
Okay. Yeah, I have the Cricut Bright Pad, which is like a light box, and the light changes. So that's
perfect.
Yep, that's helpful.
Yeah, so as long as you have a really good source of light, whether it's in a lamp or a light box, it'll make your life much easier that way. I also suggest the add-a-quarter ruler, which is a special tool that is made just for paper piecing. And I think I can actually reach mine right now, because I always have one. So mine's pink, but it's often yellow.
Okay.
I get the add-a-quarter plus.
Okay.
Which the difference is, and I'm not sure if you can see it on tape or not, one side is tapered.
Okay.
And so the side you can use to fold on your printed line.
Oh.
And then there's a ridge on this side that sticks up just a little bit. And so you can flip the ruler over and it catches on that fold of your paper, and you can use your rotary cutter right along that edge.
Oh, that's perfect.
And it speeds things up. It's one of those tools that you don't have to have, but once you have it, you don't want to be without it.
Yeah, I like that it helps you fold, because trying to fold them just by eye is a little bit.
Yeah. And you can use a piece of cardstock if you don't have the cardstock, or a greeting card, some piece of packaging material or cereal box. As long as you have a straight edge, you can use anything. But it's really nice to have it all in one tool, so you're not picking up a bunch of different things. It's one less thing to lose.
Yeah, I've never even seen that. So I'm excited that you said that. Now I have to go order one.
And my last tip would be if you have more than a couple of colors, create a fabric key.
Oh,
This
yes.
is the one for the zoo quilt.
Mm-hmm.
And so our templates are color coded. Not every foundation paper piece is going to be color coded, but you've got all the colored different hash marks, and most patterns are going to have some sort of an indication, but I like to put all of my fabric swatches, so these are real fabrics down through here that I've glued down. And even though I'm making this for the second time, I'm still referring to my color fabric key all the time.
Yeah, it's super. I mean, I that was the first thing I did was fill that in because it's so helpful, and I'm not very good. I'm not very organized. So like having that to like check back to is so helpful. I like that your pattern has that. But if you're doing another pattern, you could make your own.
Exactly.
Really simply to just glue it down to a piece of cardstock or just a piece of paper with the labels and stuff. So that's a good tip to, even if it doesn't come with, you can make one. So
Yes.
that's really neat. And I really love all those tips, and thank you for sharing them with us. It's always fun to hear like what everyone's must do or their best practices, because we're all so different. And like I said, I taught myself, so I'm kind of, most of the time I'm coming up with this stuff on my own. So to have someone who is much more knowledgeable give you tips is very helpful, and I appreciate that. So I think that's it. I think that's all my questions that I had. Is there anything else that you'd like to chat about, that you'd like to talk to us about?
Oh, well, I do a lot of different things, and
Yeah.
I did this pattern's actually going to go up for wholesale shortly.
Oh, that's exciting. So it
right
might
now,
be in quilt shops.
so yes, it's going to be available. And if you're wanting to do this as a block of the month or just want to buy it, you can get it through Dabble and Stitch, which is based in
I
Columbus,
will link
Ohio.
to that because I have a post with tips that I've linked to that to your pattern. So I will link to it again and make sure everyone knows where they can find it. But if when it's wholesale, then they can call their local quilt shop and ask them to carry the pattern, right?
Yes, they can. And I've actually been working with Dabble and Stitch, and they're doing the wholesaling. So if you want it retail or wholesale, you just go to one place and they can get you all hooked up.
Awesome. That's so, I mean, it's so great. Are you guys, so can you tell us what you're going to do for next year? Like, are you working on your next one?
Well, right now we are in the midst of our COVID shutdown.
Yeah.
So my ideal is that we are going to do another animal quilt, but it's going to be sea animals because our local zoo is scheduled to get seals and sea lions this year.
Oh, I love those.
So if I can get into the zoo to get the research materials that I need, then that will be the plan.
That would be so fun. I'm excited. I'm already excited for that. It doesn't exist yet, and I'm already excited for the sea life. Like octopuses and all that, I don't think that's how you say it, just octopus, I guess.
And yeah, we have so many great animals that I had to cut way back. So there will probably be another zoo quilt to come in the future years as well.
Yeah, I'm in the St. Louis area, and our zoo is amazing. So
I love your zoo. I went to college in St. Louis. So.
Oh, really? And we just opened an aquarium, which I have yet to go to because it was like sold out until COVID, basically. So it was sold out every day, and then everything's shut down. So I have yet to go, but we have a new aquarium.
Oh, I have to go visit now.
It's in Union Station, if you remember. Like,
I do.
And they put up a big wheel like the London Eye. It's right there. So it's kind of cool. It's pretty cool down there. They've really built it up, and we have the aquarium, and yeah, the zoo is awesome. So it touches my heart because that's one of my favorite places too, is the zoo. So, well, I'm so excited that you were here to chat with us, and it was so fun to hear your tips, and I'm looking forward to finishing my zoo family portrait. I think I got it.
Yes, exactly.
I think I'll be able to remember now that you told me. I think I'll be able to remember it. And and then looking forward to next year, and I'm sure we will chat more about your next one and all of that. So thank you so much. It was
Thank
great to
you.
chat with you. It was so fun. I hope you
Had
have a
great
great
time.
day and stay safe and stay healthy and all of those things.
You too.
Hey, thanks.
Thanks.